Hello again, and welcome to another one of the videos how to use Google Classroom to maximum effect. So we've already looked at how you can use Google Forms to set up simple tests and quizzes that can be self-marked and that you can check and release the scores. But what we had to do over lockdown was we had to generate quite a complicated end of topic test that really did test the students beyond just clicking particular multiple choice answers and writing simple short answer questions. And especially in science, we want to be able to mimic those longer answer questions and those mathematical questions as well as just short, sharp factual knowledge. So in this video, I'm going to be showing you how we adapted an exam paper into a Google form that was then set for the students to complete. So here I have the actual exam paper on the right hand side and I have the Google form that I wrote on the left hand side. So you can see that the first two questions were multiple choice. It was nice and easy to set those. I snipped out the relevant section of the exam paper, uploaded it as a picture, multiple choice questions, and selected the correct answer, so these sections at least would self-mark. We then had a longer answer question: state in terms of subatomic particles what is meant by the term isotopes. Now, it's not possible to have this as a short answer question where you can guess what the answers are. So for questions like this, just set them as a paragraph answer, and in the answer key, all you need to do is set the number of points that they're worth. All of the marking here has to be done by the teacher at a later date, but you do need to let the student know how many points it's worth. For this question here, this was a maths question. The element gallium has a relative atomic mass. Calculate the mass number of the other isotope. You must show all of your working. And because the working is important, there's no way you can just base this on a simple answer. For something like this, it would be impossible for the student to type out their working in a way that is easy to understand and easy to mark. So we really need the students to complete this on a piece of paper and then upload it. So you can see here, for this type, again I've snipped out the relevant question, but I've selected the file upload type of question here. So file upload. Now, if you have trained your students well, you should be able to select allow only specific file types and ensure they upload a PDF. They should be used to taking photographs and uploading those as PDFs by now. I would also limit the files to one. Particularly for longer answer questions, you don't want a student attaching a myriad of image files that they've taken with their camera. You want them to upload a single PDF. And by selecting PDF and one file, you can ensure they do exactly that. I have had students upload documents, so a Word doc, students taking a variety of images and then dragging those into a Word document and then uploading that. But for the sake of quickly reading these, a PDF would be preferable. It will make your life easier later on. Maximum file size. PDFs can occasionally exceed 10 megabytes, so probably 100 megabytes is a sensible amount if you just want a short sample of student work. Now, this form can accept up to 10 gigabytes of files. I misunderstood this the first time, and this is a critical point. This is the maximum file size for all users that will be completing this form. So when the students were doing this exam at the end of the last summer term, I suddenly got a warning that my file, that my folder was about to max out as all the students started uploading all of their files, and I had to rapidly change the maximum number of files from 1 gigabyte up to 10 gigabytes. So just to reiterate, that is the total size of all files for all students that will complete this quiz. So don't get caught out by that. see if you really do need 10 gigabytes, but it may be like I did. So there were 65 responses to this, and that went well over 1 gigabyte for all students. Again, you can make questions required if you wish. And again, for this, the answer key, the only answer key that you can give for a question such as this is the number of points it's worth. Give the formula of a reagent that would produce a cream-coloured precipitate when added to an aqueous solution of magnesium bromide. Now this time there is a particularly correct answer, so I was able to write the correct answers for the formula AgNO3, AgN03 in case they made that mistake. I've also put in one of these reminders. So down here I added response validation, and I said if you give me anything that is over 10 characters, flash up the warning, give the formula, in case the students tried to name silver nitrate. So I did give them a prompt there if they tried to say the wrong thing. One thing you may notice here is I have marked out the beginning of each question. So it's fine for questions 1 and 2, which were just single part questions, multiple choice. But for question 3, which was a much longer question here, spread over multiple pages and with multiple parts, I actually demarked the beginning of each question by inserting a title. If I expand this temporarily, you can see how you could do that. On the right, instead of adding a question or an image as we have done before, if you click on the TT, you are able to add a title. And this will allow you to mark out the beginning of each question for the students in a slightly more obvious way. So the start of question 4, the start of question 5, etc. Here, write an equation for the reaction of magnesium with hydrochloric acid, include state symbols. Well, here, there was no way I could predict every variation in spacing, capitalization and everything that the students would predict. So I've had to just make that a long answer text. And here, calculate the percentage uncertainty in the volume of hydrochloric acid. 1 mark, I can predict the number. And correct answers 5%, 5.0, 5.0%, 5.00, 5.00%. I've tried to guess every single variation that the students might predict for 5. Mathematical working, 4 marks. Again, no way that you could complete that using a paragraph, no way that there could be a short answer, just have to have a file upload. As before, if we look at the settings, collect email addresses, don't give the students a receipt of their responses, you don't want them to be able to forward that on. Restrict users to Ulster Grammar School, limit to 1 response, don't allow students to edit after submit, don't allow students to see what their peers have done, maximum size of all files uploaded for the whole form for all students there. Do make it a quiz, don't release the mark immediately, release it later after manual review. And once the form is released, do allow students to see the missed questions, the correct answers and the points values, although if you're going to use this next year as some formal test, you probably don't want students to be able to do that. So just have a think. If you don't want students to be able to forward their answers on to the subsequent year, then I would uncheck those. So how did we mark these? Well, we did have a variety of options to us. And one option was that different teachers could have marked different questions. So I could have taken the first few questions and Dr. Butterworth could have taken the last few questions. And obviously for something like a multiple choice, there's no problem. You can set it up to mark automatically. When it comes to a question like this, the question was, what is meant by the term isotopes? I can quickly scroll down, reading through their answers and assigning the number of marks that each answer is worth. And especially if there is a very rigid mark scheme, I can hold that in my head and I can quickly say, have they talked about the same number of protons? 1 mark. Have they talked about the different number of neutrons? second mark. So something like that is quite easy to mark. And now we come to our first file upload. Now these will take longer for you to mark. And that is just the nature of the beast here. So try and limit the number of file uploads you would need for something like this. But I can scroll down, quickly scan through the working, decide how many points it's worth, and record the number of points here, and repeat with the next student, and so on. These will take the majority of your time if you're marking per question. Here's the short answer question. They had to give the formula. 43 responses, automatically marked as correct. Here's an interesting quirk that came because this wasn't marked by question. One of us has decided AGN03 was okay. One of us has decided AGN03 was not okay. So that is a difference between two different people marking this test as to whether or not it was valid or not. And this may be one of those benefits of marking per question rather than per person. Scrolling on to the equations, again, this would not have been possible to mark with a short answer. 6 students did generate exactly the same equation and get 2 marks, but there are a huge variety of different ways that could be written depending on spaces, etc. So again, quickly scanning through here, 1 mark for correctly balanced, 1 mark for correct formulas. A second file upload question here, and I'm not going to show you how to mark, but just show you the variety of file types. We have PDFs, we have Word docs, we have image files. Something I haven't really talked about is the fact that you can leave feedback. So for this particular answer, explaining why the student only got 2 out of 3 marks, I was able to click on the add feedback button and leave the explanation ratio the wrong way round. You may wish to do this occasionally if there's something very obvious that you can just quickly point the student in the right direction. And just to show you a longer response question, each of these responses out of 4, and I can hold in my head the fact that trigonal pyramidal for 1 mark, 107 degrees for the 2nd mark, 4 things around the central atom for the 3rd mark, and lone pair repelling more than bonding pairs for the 4th mark. So I can quickly scan through all of these answers, assigning marks as necessary. As I said, the method that we eventually went with, rather than marking per question, is marking per individual. And again, we could have split it that out of the 65 students who did the test, I could have marked the first 32 that came in, and Dr. Butterworth could have marked the other 33. As it was, we decided to mark our own students, so it is a case of clicking here, selecting the students that you recognise, and going down and marking question by question. The 2 advantages I can instantly think of this are that firstly, you won't penalise a student too much if they make the same mistake in multiple answers, although in an actual exam of course they would be. The second thing is that you won't spend all your time waiting for PDFs to open, because there'll only be a couple of those per script. Now, second really important thing coming up, whether you decide to mark by question or by individual, you must turn off responses while you are marking. Because if you have responses on while you are marking it and a new response comes in, then that will undo any unsaved changes you have. So while you are marking this, I would absolutely turn off accepting responses unless you are sure that there will be no students submitting any further responses. Having marked all scripts, you will then of course go to the Google Classroom and import the grades, and hopefully you will see everybody's grades imported into the classroom, and then when you're happy you can select everybody and you will be able to return the scripts. I can't do that because everything is already returned.